help but wonder where I'm bound, where I'm bound. Can't help but wonder where I'm bound.
Hello there, everyone. I am Rebecca Rusch, and welcome to episode 0 of What's the Rush podcast. I am so glad you're here, and I'm really excited to navigate this adventure with you. I've always been a curious explorer, and this journey of podcasting, it kind of has my hands sweating and my heart racing, just like any great expedition. So that's how I know it's going to be great. You know, you might know me as a world champion or Hall of Fame athlete, or maybe you don't know me at all. But either way, we're going to explore some new territory together. A little bit about me. For over 3 decades, I've been pushing boundaries in the world of endurance sports. I'm a world champion, 2-time Hall of Fame athlete, adventure racer, mountain biker, paddler, also an entrepreneur. I've worn a ton of hats in the business of sports and chased a lot of finish lines and also forged new trails in the industry when there weren't any there. I am a specialist in navigating the wilderness for very long periods of time. But in this podcast, What's the Rush? I want to talk about a different kind of navigation and exploration. I want to talk about being still, looking inward, and the courage it takes to shed the armor that we all build around ourselves. My intention for this episode is to give you a little bit of background on my experience, my skill set, and to kind of share the events and motivation that really spawned the inception of this project. And this will build the foundation for all the conversations that follow. So hopefully after getting to know me a little bit and the plans for What's the Rush, you'll be all in and you'll be ready to explore with me. So, all right, a little bit about me. I am a lifetime athlete and a specialist in outdoor endurance sports. I've competed at the world-class level for over 3 decades in various sports disciplines: cycling, paddling, rock climbing, adventure racing, cross-country skiing, running. But I discovered my love for nature around age 5 or 6, maybe even younger, when my mom started taking us on summer camping trips around the US. We'd go to all the national parks, and I was in heaven out there exploring and seeing new places. Like, I just was in my happy place out there in nature. And then around age 15, I found organized sports for the first time when I joined the high school cross country running team. And it was there in that kind of structure that I found community and adventure and challenge, and really an appreciation for what the body and the mind could do when trained. So from that point on, athletics and being outside in nature have been an integral part of my life and my career. Running was Running was the gateway to so many other sports and kind of the impetus for me to consciously shape my career around sports. I did not envision a professional athlete career at all. I had no examples of that in my life. My family wasn't into athletics. So instead, my passion for sport, I turned my sights towards working within the sports business. So I got a business and a marketing degree and then started taking jobs in health clubs and outdoor gear stores. I got certified as a climbing guide. And eventually I ended up as a business partner and manager launching some of the earliest rock climbing gyms in the US. And it was amazing using all of my business and marketing skills and leadership skills and bringing them into rock climbing gyms. It was an absolute dream job. And I kind of thought I was set there, but I left the dream job after 5 years because really the trail was calling. I was getting invited to these really cool expeditions in a sport I hadn't really heard of called adventure racing. And what those were kind of these multi-sport expeditions where you'd go for hundreds of miles with a course that wasn't marked. You're navigating through the wilderness, over the mountains, and you're on foot, you're on horseback, you're paddling, you're climbing. And typically these teams were one female or co-ed, which usually meant one woman and three guys. And they took place all around the world, these remote locations. And, it was a really cool invitation to go do these expeditions. And you're trying to get from point A to point B as fast as possible with little sleep, doing all these different sports, operating as a team, and navigating the whole time. You're hungry, you're tired. It was a real testament to sort of the physical and emotional strength of human beings. And at first, I thought these invitations were just going to be a little detour for me to be able to travel the world and go exploring. And I had enough of a sports background with climbing and running to be able to kind of manage all of the sports. I didn't expect these adventures to turn into a professional athlete career that would span my lifetime, but that's exactly what happened. I began getting invited on more of these expeditions. I began managing our team, getting sponsorships, building relationships, and handling all of the logistics for 6 people while racing at the world-class level. And so these expeditions, they took me around the world. I filled 3 passports, but I really learned so much about leadership and teamwork and resilience and tolerance and how to market and run a team as a business. I also learned that I was really, really good at all of these outdoor explorations, navigating rough terrain, dealing with teammates, dealing with sleep deprivation, doing really, really hard things, all while running businesses at the same time. And during that time, I was stacking up other expeditions like riverboarding the Grand Canyon. Yes, it's kind of like boogie boarding in winter, rope soloing some big walls in Yosemite and Zion, and really getting into climbing and big wall climbing. I did a bunch of ocean racing with an elite outrigger canoe team. And I was also racing Class 5 whitewater with the U.S. Women's Whitewater Rafting Team. So I was doing a lot of different really cool sports. And at age 38, I transitioned to really focus full time on endurance cycling. And so, yes, it was very late to start a professional cycling career, but really that second half was like was really the most successful part of my career if you're looking on paper. I dominated 24-hour solo events, winning world championships in that 3 times, Leadville 104 times, lots of stage races around the world, some FKTs in mountain biking, fastest known times on some iconic trails. And I was really dominating the endurance mountain bike scene. This kind of led me to be an early adopter into the world of gravel cycling, which, at the time really wasn't a thing. And now it's one of the fastest growing segments of cycling. And so I got into gravel cycling as well, winning pretty much everything there was to win at that time, and also birthing my signature gravel event, Rebecca's Private Idaho. That's been one of the top events in this space for over 13 years. So kind of cutting edge trailblazer on the gravel cycling scene as well. And what was happening at the time is kind of the merging of my expedition skills from all of my paddling and climbing and adventure racing, combined with the skills and speed that I was developing on the bike, kind of made for this perfect mashup for me to move into ultra distance bike packing or bike expedition. So I was kind of taking the best of everything I've been learning and pulling it all together. And I started riding iconic trails like the Iditarod Trail in winter, the Ho Chi Minh Trail. I rode my bike up and down Kilimanjaro, across the interior of Iceland by bike, and started doing these really big bike expeditions. So, you can kind of see over the course of my career, I've broken and held a few records. I've accomplished quite a few firsts in the world of endurance sports. But also, on top of the athletic achievements that I'm really proud of, I've also built and managed 4 successful businesses in the sports world and have been trailblazing in the business of sport as well. So, you can kind of see from a little bit of this background that for most of my life, my identity was built on movement, rushing forward, chasing finish lines, collecting podiums, racking up first ascents and achievements around the world. And grit, resilience, independence, toughness, that's what people saw in me. And in many ways, it's what I celebrated in myself. I'm known as the queen of pain, the athlete who can endure anything. And I wore that like an armor. And in many ways, that identity protected me. But here's the truth. The hardest thing I've ever done wasn't crossing any mountains or deserts or forging any rivers or oceans. It wasn't standing on podiums or sort of the grit and determination it took to be at the top of my field for so long, or it wasn't launching businesses or any gnarly expedition, not even riding the Ho Chi Minh Trail. Those were not the biggest challenges of my life. The biggest challenge I've encountered to date is actually slowing down and letting go. Releasing my grip on the identity I'd sculpted and actually relaxing my control on the outcomes. This journey of transformation actually began in 2015 when I set out to find the place where my father died. He was a fighter pilot in the Vietnam-American conflict. He was shot down in the jungles of Laos in 1972. I was just 3. So I went and designed an expedition to ride the entire length of the Ho Chi Minh Trail through Vietnam, Laos, Cambodia. It was a month-long expedition, and I designed it as a physical undertaking, but also as an emotional journey. I wanted to go to the place where my dad died, and I thought I was just looking for answers to questions like what happened that day, what does it look like there, is there anything left from the crash, maybe what was my dad like, maybe I'd find closure. I didn't really know what I would find, but what I didn't expect was that the real challenge and the real journey wasn't through the jungle landscape. The real challenge was the journey inside of me. And as part of the creative process of making a film, I was asked to journal every day, and this was kind of a new process for me. I was interviewed multiple times a day, really forcing me to contemplate and articulate what I was feeling and experiencing along this arduous physical and emotional journey. It was a type of introspection that was totally new for me and a little bit uncomfortable, but really kind of started me on a path of transformation. So that 1,300-mile jungle expedition, it became more than a physical and a personal journey. It became an Emmy Award-winning film called Blood Road. And it's a beautiful film about the devastation of war, the power of forgiveness, and quite honestly, the healing power of human connection. And for me personally, Blood Road was a beginning and an opening and a threshold that I passed through. I realized out there I wasn't just searching for my father or these map coordinates. I was searching for a missing part of me and the pieces of myself that I'd hidden behind the armor of achievement. When I finally stood on that sacred ground where my father's plane went down, I felt this huge internal shift. For the first time in my life, I wasn't racing towards the finish line. There was no one cheering, and the drive to go forward just evaporated. I was still, just listening and feeling. Just feeling the energy of my father, listening to my heart. For the first time in my life, I had to ask myself, who am I really without the accolades of a finish line to chase? Who's the kind of daughter that my father would be proud of? That day by the tree, I wrote a letter to him and read it out loud and placed a few personal items and the letter in the cavity of this beautiful tree on the ground where he died. Just as I put the letter in there, a butterfly swirled by, and this moment of stillness, it just opened a window in me. And so many people say that moment must have been such closure for you. It must have been such a relief. And actually, it's totally the opposite. That moment was not closure of a life that ended too soon, but really an opening. It was the beginning of our relationship, my relationship with my dad, and a clarity of purpose, and also the discovery of a part of myself that I didn't yet know. My partner on the Blood Road ride was this amazing woman, a Vietnamese cyclist named Huen, and we came from totally different backgrounds and experiences, but we shared family history with the war. And at the end of our ride, I remember this powerful moment where I hugged Huen and we were done with this massive expedition. And I thanked her for teaching me how to slow down. And I was a little bit shocked to even hear myself say those words at the end of a ride because you see, during the ride, she was slower than I was. I had to wait along the trail. I had to teach her how to use a tent to pace herself. She didn't have the ultra endurance experience that I did. I had to teach her how to fuel her body day after day. And originally, this was a source of frustration for me because I just wanted to charge and keep going. And really, it became an unexpected gift of the whole entire journey because our slower pace really allowed me to experience and see and feel more, and externally and internally. And had Huen not been there, I would have raced through that landscape Queen of Pain style, and I would have missed so many of the gifts that were along the trail and inside of me. This expedition, as I said, it was a real shift of a transformation for me. And this was about 10 years ago. This expedition was also the birth of the Be Good Foundation that I launched in my father's name, really to help heal the wounds of war and create change through bikes. It was a massive shift kind of in the style of riding and expeditions I was doing, but also into more globally purposeful work. Another part of the story I need to share with you is in 2021, I had another dramatic shift in pace, another physical and emotional journey, another really slowing down of the type of pace that I'm used to maintaining. That happened when I suffered a concussion that left me with life-altering ongoing symptoms for 3 years. An interesting point from my crash is that the impact point on my helmet was exactly on the map coordinates of my father's crash site. This was a connection that I really couldn't ignore. And it sort of connected my crash to his crash and was another sort of message to me that maybe my dad was with me. What was a mild concussion, the ongoing post-concussion symptoms were anything but mild, and they lasted 3 years, and this was really devastating for me. This injury, it forced me to stop, to sit still, to kind of do nothing, which is something I spent a lifetime avoiding. During this time, I stopped training and racing. I really stopped moving at all. And it was a massive downward spiral in physical health and mental health. And let me tell you, that kind of stillness can be its own kind of pain. Because when the movement stops and everything is quiet, I was left alone with myself. And I was left alone asking some really tough questions. Why do I feel so lost? What am I holding on to that's no longer serving me? Who am I if not a world-class athlete? Have I been racing towards something or racing away from something? And what is it that I have to offer the world, if anything? It was heavy introspective stuff and quite honestly, a landscape I'd never really been forced to navigate and didn't have the skill to navigate. During one of the darkest moments of my post-concussion recovery, a friend shared a story with me about Michelangelo that really changed my perspective on things. And this is what he said. When Michelangelo was asked how he created the statue of David, he said, "The angel was always in the marble. I just carved away everything that wasn't him and set him free." And that story, it resonated so deeply with me because what if our greatest work isn't about adding more achievements, accolades, things that we're doing, but instead about removing what doesn't serve us? What if our true selves are already there underneath, waiting to be revealed? I thought about this story, made me think about what I needed to carve away and what weight was I wearing that could be shed. How light would I feel if I stopped carrying this load? And why was I hiding my true identity anyway? This protective layer I'd crafted and superhero identity that I'd curated was actually weighing me down and exhausting me and preventing me from truly coming out of my cocoon and emerging like a butterfly, like the one I saw in Laos by Dad's tree. You see, even though I spent my life without him physically present, my dad's been part of my life since I went to Laos, and he's shown up in critical moments and unique ways to guide me. My mom, well, she raised my sister and me as a single parent, a working mom, just diligently working to provide for us while also modeling so much grit and determination. She was always physically present for us. She died recently and unexpectedly, and this has been a really big jolt. My biggest cheerleader in life is now gone. As I'm moving through the grief of her death and the massive hole that is left, I am supported by the understanding that growth comes from our hardest challenges. And I know that she will continue to show up for me in different ways as Dad has done. A driving force for me now going forward is to be the kind of daughter that they'd both be continually proud of, and to use this life that they gave me to make the biggest impact I can. This podcast is part of my legacy and my promise to my parents to continue to explore and invite others like you along for the ride. We all have a masterpiece inside of us, a version of ourselves that is waiting to be set free. But to uncover it, we have to become our own artists, our own Michelangelo, and carve away the noise, the fear, the baggage, the armor. What's the Rush podcast was born from these learnings in my transformative experiences and my adventures, and the curiosity to continue to explore within and without. The podcast is called What's the Rush? One, because it's my name, but also because it's often in the stillness at the summit or in the valley, wherever you are. But it's often in the stillness where we truly see and feel the truth. While we might be rushing to curiously explore, there's an urgency to discover and to learn and uncover truths, seen and unseen. I've spent so much of my life rushing, pushing, going harder, faster, further, longer. But here and now, I actually want to ask a different question of you. What is the rush? What happens if we slow down and look inside and get honest about who we are underneath it all? This podcast is my invitation to you and to myself to have those honest conversations. We will sit down with some of the world's most accomplished, resilient, and inspiring people, and not to talk about what they've achieved, but about what they've let go of, what they've had to shed to become the truest versions of themselves. So why me as the host? What makes me qualified to explore with you in this way? Well, my background as an elite adventure athlete has honed my skills in wilderness navigation. So we have that. I've spent my lifetime learning how not to be lost or physically broken all over the world, from Laos to Alaska to Borneo, and stood on countless podiums and learned the kind of resilience that it takes to keep coming back year after year. All of these things have hardened me in many ways. And more recently, things like excavating the childhood loss of a parent, sitting in the stillness of my injury, and grieving the loss of my mother. These things have softened me. I shared a bit of my background and the impetus for What's Rush so we can launch from this starting point. That vulnerability isn't weakness. Vulnerability is the very chisel that carves away the unnecessary excess and sets us free. We'll grow together through these conversations. We'll maybe get a little bit uncomfortable, and we'll learn from the wisdom that comes from life's hardest moments. You know, sometimes the most important discoveries happen when we stop rushing and we start listening. So, What's the Rush podcast is where world-renowned leaders share transformative insights they've discovered in life's quietest moments. From the peaks of achievement to the depths of challenge, our guests will reveal the profound wisdom they've never before shared. Wisdom that emerged not in the spotlight, but in the moments of stillness and reflection. So welcome, and thank you so much for being here. And thank you for your willingness to go exploring with me, both within and without. I am so excited to shed the armor, chip away at the marble, and uncover the masterpiece that's within all of us. I am Rebecca Rusch, your teammate on this adventure, and this is What's the Rush.
Hey, it's a long and dusty road and a hot and heavy load. Folks I meet ain't always kind. Some are bad, some are good, some have done the best they could. Some have tried to ease my troubling mind. And I can't help but wonder where I'm bound, where I'm bound. Can't help but wonder where I'm bound.